Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote-unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp, and those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, hello, and welcome to this, the Monday edition, the last Monday of June edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand, who's sitting in for Todd today, who is enjoying an extra long weekend as he celebrates Canada Day. I think he's hanging out with Prince Edward over on the island, so I'm sure he'll have some stories to tell us about that when he comes back. He'll be back in the big chair on Wednesday, because we will, of course, be off tomorrow to commemorate our nation's birthday for Canada Day and take part in some of the events. Listening to the news, well, actually reading the news this morning, it looks like the Mother Nature may play a little bit of a role in the celebrations tomorrow evening, perhaps into the night. So don't want to be a naysayer or a doomsayer, but you just might want to keep a close eye on HRM's website, because they will obviously update us with regards to what's going on with the fireworks, and keep an eye on the forecast as well, so you can dress appropriately. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass, who is doing yeoman's work in the control room, keeping things organized today. As you all well know, when I take over, things go all crazy. So I'm glad that she's here and she's helping us out. Before we get to Councillors on the Hot Seat, I've been reading some of the reviews, didn't go myself, but been reading some of the reviews from the big concert at the Garrison Grounds on the weekend. Of course, Mother Nature playing a role in that on Saturday and into Sunday. From what I've heard from people that were there, it was a pretty good show, despite the weather. And I heard that many people had a great time, particularly on Saturday night. Haven't really read much about last night's performance by the Killers, but Lenny Kravitz and Amanda Marshall apparently tore up the joint. So congratulations to everybody involved with that. Today of the official, I guess, last day of school for HRCE. I think it's report card day today. Was my most fearful day of the year when I was going to school. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. See, eventually you catch on, and then eventually you're able to be a contributing member of society, regardless of your academic standing, or maybe not. Anyway, congratulations to all the students, particularly those who have graduated, much like Vanessa's daughter, who graduated on the weekend and are moving on to bigger and better things. There is a proud mom on the other side of the glass over there today. Let me tell you, she was running around showing pictures and everything else. So congratulations to y'all. As I mentioned, Canada Day is tomorrow. Lots of stuff going on, not just in HRM, but right around the region in celebration of Canada Day. Again, I will say again, just keep an eye on the forecast. Hopefully things will change. Hopefully things will go off without a hitch. But there is potentially some rain in the forecast Saturday or Tuesday night. So we look forward to that. And very quickly, I don't know if you've been following the news today, but I'm not very happy with what I heard come out of Ottawa today, and that is that the federal government has decided to rescind the digital services tax in the face of yet another threat from the President of the United States. I think to this point I've been relatively pleased with Mark Carney and his handling of said president, but I just wonder what kind of precedent this sets now, that he threatens to stop negotiations and put tariffs on again, and suddenly we start rolling back, which would be millions and millions of dollars in taxes from the big tech companies in the United States. Might be something you want to talk about during the open hour today. We'll do that from 11 until 12. I've taken up enough time. It's time to go now into Councillors on the Hot Seat. And we're very pleased to welcome into the studio on this should probably be a holiday Monday. And we welcome District 7 Councillor, that's Halifax South Downtown, Laura White. Laura, how are you?
I'm well. Good morning, Dan.
And on the other side of the table, District 9, Halifax West Armdale. I'm still old school and still getting used to all these names. Anyway, Halifax West Armdale, District 9, and that's Shawn Cleary. Shawn, welcome.
Thanks, man.
I guess we get the button there, Vanessa. Are we in the right spot? You there, Shawn? No, don't hear him. It's Monday. Vanessa's going to make that fix. Anyway, Councillors on the hot seat will go now for the next 60 minutes. The telephone lines are open. 902-405-6000 is the number. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255 is our toll-free number if you'd like to join the conversation. But because I get to sit in the chair here, and I'm obviously going to ask the question that's been talked about on this program for many, many, many years and months and hours, and that is the bike lane question. Last week, Halifax Regional Council held yet another debate on this. It came back. It was Councillor Deputy Mayor Tony Mancini's motion that was before Council. 3 parts to it that was passed by Council. One was to list the projects through 2026 through 2029 and their cost, assess the feasibility of alternative solutions that could reduce future cost, and to provide opportunities for external funding sources. We'll start with you, Laura. You voted for 1 and for 3, but not for 2. I'm curious as to why you voted against assessing the feasibility of alternative solutions.
I don't know if that was the exact language, because to me that sounded like changing the routing of what we've laid out for our minimum grid AAA network. Right. And that was a lot of thought was put into where those cycle packs should go, so I didn't want to change that. But
you're in favor of getting this thing costed out, and with these, like, we're hitting what, $90 million now that this thing's up to?
Yeah, I'm all about financial sustainability. I just believe this is an investment as opposed to a cost. So that's why I was pushing hard to get the full picture, what comes back from staff, not just about cost, but what this brings back to us, and to divide up those costs into, when you're spending money on a project, a lot of it is actually road improvements, a lot of it's pedestrian safety improvements, and in the case of Brunswick Street, we're getting a public space too. So it's not just bike lanes.
Right. Shawn, you weren't at the meeting.
Well, I was at the earlier part of the day meeting, and then at 5 o'clock had to leave because it was my father-in-law's birthday.
Right.
And we had reservations on the waterfront for him. And it was an emotion that I felt was in need of my extra vote. But I'm very, as you know, Dan, passionate about active transportation and a healthier city. And so one of the things you didn't mention was over that same period of time. So we've already, with the province and the feds, I think spent about $17-ish million, most of that their money, not HRM money.
Right.
So I think it's $77 million left to go. But let's put that in context. Over the same period of time, we're going to spend well over $200 million just repaving roads for cars. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, and that's just repaving roads, that's not new roads, that's not the Windsor Street Exchange, that's not Dutch Village Road, that's not all the extra projects. So you look at this, what we're spending on bike lanes is probably around 5% of the total amount we spend on our roads. So let's keep that in perspective. So if you don't like spending money on roads, let's stop spending money on roads for cars.
If I, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you will, I think Councillor Mancini said that we've built 40% of the network to date. Am I correct with that, or is it 60?
I think about 60, including the tactical.
Right.
So there are some things that aren't permanent, but are permanent light, we'll call it, with precast curbing, bollards, that bit. And some of it, has changed over the last number of years. Hollis Street and Lower Water, for example, we had to redo those. I think we're about 60% there. And we're talking about the urban core, what we refer to as AAA, All Ages and Abilities Network. And so a lot of this is actually not in bike lanes at all. They're what are called local street bikeways and multi-use paths. And so if you go up Bears Road behind Citadel School, you'll see the multi-use paths. If you go, Oak, Allen, Vernon, Seymour, those are local street bikeways. And those are the examples of how we can share space with roads between cars and bicycles, but we have to traffic calm them to make them safer. So some of them have speed humps, curb extensions, turn restrictions. And so we're looking at all of those different ways of making people feel and be safe on the mode of transportation they choose to use. 60%
of the bike lanes have been built at a cost, I think you said $17 million. Now we're talking another $70 million more for 40%. Why is it so much more expensive?
We've left the hard, expensive stuff for last. It's easy to do the quick stuff. Like you're doing house renovations. You don't put a third story on and go, ooh, look how quick that was. You put a bathroom addition on and then you put the third story on. And so for us, what we've done, like I talked about with the local street bikeways, they're relatively easy. However, they're also very expensive in and of themselves because ripping up roads, ripping up curbs, putting in new curbs, extending them in certain intersections, the design work that goes into that, things are way more expensive now. Just talk to anyone who builds housing. An apartment building today is probably twice as the cost of what it was about 7 years ago. And so when we're talking about the expense of this, there are, and I think this speaks to what Laura was trying to do at council last week, it speaks to the costs and benefits of doing this. No one's going to argue that we shouldn't repave our roads because we need them for buses, we need them for trucks that transport goods around the city. But I find it interesting that people constantly talk about the cost of bike lanes. People choose to get around in different ways. In some parts of the municipality, it's much more prevalent. In my neighborhood, if you look at the census data, about 10% of people bike to work and school. If you go further down Quinpool Road to, say, Vernon Street, that neighborhood is almost 20% biking. You go to Hammonds Plains, it's, a fraction. And so,
isn't the over number 2%? Is that number kind of sticks out in my mind?
It fluctuates between 1 and 2, depending on the measure.
So we're going to spend 5% of the roads budget on a piece of infrastructure that 2% of the population uses.
So let's put it in perspective. How many percentage of the population use your street?
Oh, I live on Parkland Drive. It's a busy street.
Yeah. But how many thousands of vehicles?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
So give you an example. 55,000 go down Quinpool.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So usually between, say, a few hundred and 1,000 or two go down a residential street. So those are fractions of our total traffic. Should we not ever repave those roads?
Oh, and I completely understand that.
No, but if you extend the logic, if you're saying only a percentage of people use it, then why are we spending money on it? But I could use that argument on everything, a sidewalk, for example, a residential street. Why not just close them since very few people use them?
But they do.
But so do people in bike lanes. And in fact, this is the problem with the argument we have around the whole network.
Right.
It's not a network yet. It's pieces of a network going together that are not connected. You will not see, as in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, any city that is way further ahead than we are in bike lanes. Once they actually build a network and connect it, the number of users goes up exponentially. Like right now, you can go down, you can see thousands of people using our bikes or bike lanes. Mm-hmm. When we finish that and get them connected and make the whole route safer, you're going to see tens of thousands of people using those bike lanes.
Tens of thousands.
Absolutely. Just think about it. We're already, so the urban core is roughly 25% of the population of Halifax, but we have the highest level of biking of any city in Canada, when you think about it on a population basis. So even with the crappy, unsafe infrastructure we have now, we're a biking
Shawn,
city.
Why is it that I constantly listen to this program and I hear over and over again that people never see, I'll come to you in a minute, Laura, never see anybody in the bike lanes?
So think of the selection bias of your audience. Think about what's their perspective. How many people in your demographics, you know your research for marketing better than I do. How many people are listening to the show while they're driving? Probably a very high percentage.
Yeah, well, normally, yes.
Yeah. How many people are listening while biking? Probably next to nobody. So the people who are calling
in the cars and they tell me they don't see anybody in the lanes. So if you're saying that there's tens of thousands of people that are in the bike lanes now.
No, will be. There are thousands of people in them now. There will be tens of thousands once we finish the network.
Then shouldn't we see them more often?
Yes. And you do, but you're confusing anecdotal observation with actual scientific measurement. If I put a camera there over, say, a week-long period and measure them on a daily basis, as opposed to you going out there for 5 minutes and go, oh, I don't see anyone, that's a very big difference in actual measurement and objectivity of that measurement.
Laura, I promised I'd come to you, so I'll come to you. Your thoughts on this?
I was going to comment on the audience, too. Like, people are driving and listening to your show. It's kind of a selective
one would
thing.
think that when somebody's driving, they would see more of the network as they are driving. They would see more bike lanes because they're not sitting on a street corner and watching.
But shouldn't they see pedestrians too?
Well, they do, and
how many do they hit?
Exactly, and there was a really tragic incident in Dartmouth this weekend. That all being said, when they're in their cars, they're not seeing people in the bike lanes. And I mean, Shawn, you've been you listen to the show as long as I have. It's a constant complaint.
What color boots am I wearing right now?
Well,
no, I'm in the room with you. What color boots am I wearing?
I have no idea. You're on the other side of the desk.
Exactly. So where your perception is and the processes in actually interpreting that in your brain are going to influence what you recall. And we already know memories are reconstructed every time we bring them forward. So the fact that people don't see them is a reflection of their biases against bicycles because they're out there. I walked here today and I saw probably a dozen bicycles going up and down the Windsor Street bike lanes.
I can't argue with you because I wasn't there. We're going to take our first break. The telephone lines are open, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. District 9 Councillor Shawn Cleary, District 7 Councillor Laura White are your guests. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand in for Todd, and it's called Councillors on the Hot Seat because that's what it is designed to be. Your chance to put these two councillors, District 9 Shawn Cleary, District 7's Laura White, onto the hot seat. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. I've talked long enough. Time to take some calls, shall we? Let's welcome Chris to the program. Chris, how are you?
I'm not bad. Good morning, councillors. Good morning, Laura.
Hi, Chris.
You're my councillor. You know who I am.
I do.
Shawn, you just made two of the most ridiculous comments I have ever heard in my life about anything. One, once the bike lanes are completed, tens of thousands of bikers will be using them. The second comment, that we psychologically tune out the bikes that are out there. We don't see them because we psychologically tune them out. That is ridiculous. We see them if they're there. I was at an event 2 weeks ago. It was attended by bike people and people driving cars. I asked about a dozen bike people if they used the bike lanes. They all said very, very seldom. I said, why? Or I asked them why. And they said, we use basically, and the response was generally the same. We cut through streets that we can make our trip as quickly as possible from point A to point B. We ignore the bike lanes because they don't take us there fast enough. We can do it quicker by cutting through side streets, going around areas, rather than sticking straight through the bike lanes. What's your response to that?
Well, it's pretty simple. Which part? The first two questions about my ridiculousness, or the second part?
Oh no, you don't have to comment on that because I'm sure anybody that listened to it will agree with me.
Unless they're a psychologist. Yes, sure. But in terms of the bike lanes, so the first thing you have to consider is we actually have very few bike lanes. In fact, I think it's like 0.something% of our road infrastructure actually has bike lanes. So they're actually not easy to come upon anywhere. And so it depends also on your origin and destination. So I live on Quinpool Road, and if I ride to City Hall, there is no bike lane except for a small section on Cogswell or Rainy that I'll go down. And so that's only probably 10% of my overall trip. And if I'm going to the grocery store, I'll bike down Oak and Allen and then down Monastery to the drive over Canadian Tire. So there's no bike lane there at all. So I don't disagree that the vast majority of cyclists don't use bike lanes because we have hardly any bike lanes.
That's right. I agree with your analysis of that.
But the point, Chris, is that when you build them, and this is where the 10,000s of numbers come from, if you look at any city that actually has a connected network of bike lanes, they see their increase in cyclists go up by hundreds and hundreds of percents. And so if you extrapolate for Halifax, the thousands that we already have, and you say, okay, we build bike lanes and we connect them, then you can say, based on the experience of similar cities, we will have the same result. And so the point is, if you want more people on bicycles, and if you look at the research in terms of the demographics who ride, I would be, in the category of, say, road warrior. I've been riding since I was a young child. I go out, doesn't matter the danger of traffic. I've been knocked off my bike many times, but I'm still out there. Take someone like my spouse, for example. She will only ride on residential streets or bike lanes. She will not ride down Quinpool Road. She will not ride down Connaught. She will not ride down Chebucto. And so for her, it's a safety and comfort issue. And she's like about, I think the stats would say, depending on which report you're looking at, between 30 and 50% of the population would cycle, but don't because they don't feel safe.
So in order, I guess, to make these lanes usable and wanted to be used by bikers, you'd have to pretty well put bike lanes on every street in the city.
No, not at all. You just connect the main thoroughfares.
You're just not going to do it. But let me get to something I think is really important. This whole thing about bike lanes, and most people I think will agree with me on this. It's not so much the bike lanes, it's in the expenditure of it. It's the fact that what City Council has done and continues to do in so many cases is they go against what the majority of the people want.
Not in my district.
Why do you guys do that? And don't come back at me, Shawn, please, and say the majority
but you're just
of people
factually
want
incorrect,
bike lanes.
Chris. So if you look at the resident survey we
did
did last fall, 86% of Haligonians in that survey, and that was a scientific survey of thousands of Haligonians, 86% of them supported our bike lanes. And so that was.
I don't believe that for.
Go to halifax.ca, go in the search box top left, type in resident survey, click on the results, and you will see. And in fact, you can look at a district by district breakdown. You can look and see what the support is in District 7.
Yeah, well, I don't believe your
go
survey
read it.
for 1 second.
It's a scientific survey of random sample of Haligonians.
You can call it a scientific survey. You can call it whatever you want. Many surveys are skewed in favor to get results.
You can actually. So here's how you can tell. You can go on and read the questions in the survey, and you can look at the methodology. It's all in there, and you can decide for yourself whether or not it is a valid survey.
Well, anecdotally, I have talked to no one that is 100% behind bike lanes. We hear it on this show
talking to me
all
right
the
now.
time. Constantly, we hear it. That people do not want all this money spent on bike lanes. And this is the point. It doesn't matter if it was bike lanes or if it was painting crosswalks in the pride colors or whatever you might want to do.
Oh, you just lost me there, Chris. Sorry about that.
If the majority of the people do not want their money spent that way, why do you continuously push it down our throats?
Because you're not representative of everyone. Trust me. The people I talk to, conversations, emails, social media, they very much agree with me. Thanks.
All right, Chris, I got jam lines. I want to move on.
Okay, Dan, thanks very much.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let us welcome Ken to the program. Ken, how are you?
Good. How are you, Dan?
Good. Your question quickly, please. We're almost up against the break here.
I'm gonna agree 100% with Chris. I think Shawn's eyes are brown because he's so full of it.
We need to let's keep this in an adult conversation, okay? Please.
Well, you come on the radio and you're trying to BS everybody with this. Okay, let's go in camera and we'll come up with a really good excuse for making bike lanes, and it's stupid. There's not thousands of people out there, and trust me, I was on the road. I was a truck driver here in the city. Go talk to the trucking companies. Go talk to the couriers and ask them how many people are in the bike lanes. Very certainly, you are not going to get the answer of thousands from any of them. Like, I don't know what's in it for them or whatever the case may be, who keeps voting, for these bike lanes or whatever. Oh, build them and they will come tens of thousands. Come on, give your head a shake.
You have a question for the councillors, Ken?
Why? Okay, the right turns, Shawn, you mentioned the right turns, right? Completely ridiculous. Why are you putting them in there for bike safety when you get the Nova Scotia Bike Coalition of Nova Scotia or whatever gets on there and they go safety, 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 and then all of a sudden they come on there and they say, oh, we want to do these Colorado stops.
I think it's Idaho stops.
Idaho.
Right? You can run through, they want to run through stop signs and red lights, but you want to hold up this whole city with no right turns on ridiculous places like Windmill Road.
If I can, Ken, those turn restrictions, so are not done by council under the Provincial Motor Vehicle Act. Council doesn't actually have that power. They're done by the Halifax Traffic Authority, and they're in more places than have bike lanes. For example, Jubilee, Oxford. You can go down to many different areas of the city. Both have left and right turn restrictions, some by time of day, and almost none of them are anywhere near bike lanes. But the reason they're done is because of incidents of near misses or hits when it comes to vehicle pedestrians, which is all open data, by the way. You can go on to halifax.ca, type in open data, and you can look at the traffic incidents. There's a map, and it shows you every incident going back for a number of years now.
Yeah, so council hires somebody to do a survey, and if the survey don't come out in their favor, that guy or that company will never get hired again for a survey. So guess which way the survey is going to go? It's going to go whichever way you want it to go. So don't cut us that. I mean, that's been around for years, and it's full of BS too. right? It's crazy. You're holding up the whole city for bike lanes that less than 1% use, right? And there's not thousands. There's not going to be tens of thousands. Like for what, a 2.5 month period? Come on, get real. You got to come up with a better excuse than that, Shawn.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ken. We're up against the break. The Councillors on the hot seats. It's hot in here today. We'll continue after the news. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrom. We're back in minutes. I'm already on to 2 pages of notes, and we're only a half an hour into Councillors on the hot seat. Hope you're all having a fantastic... Should this day be a holiday, really? Because half the world's working. Well, more than half the world's not. So... should the day when we have Canada Day on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, should that be a holiday? I bet our councillors would want to weigh in on that. But the topic du jour, as it has been for the last little while here, is, of course, the bike lanes. We have some lines open for you if you'd like to ask a question, 902-405-6000. Very quickly, Shawn, before we go back to the phone lines, you mentioned the results of a resident survey that has some of this data that everybody's kind of kicking around here. Can you explain? I'm getting lots of emails about it. Can you tell me how I find it? And is it I find sometimes those surveys are hard to read because they're in babble that I don't understand.
This one actually has a ton of infographics and lots of information in it, and it's written in a very because it comes to council, so it's got to be written in a way that dumb people can understand. I'm including myself. So the easiest way to get it is go to halifax.ca.
Yep.
There's a search bar in the top left. Just type in resident survey. But if you want the URL, and I can send this to Vanessa, maybe she can put it in the show notes or something. But it's halifax.ca/city-hall/accountability-transparency/resident/survey or -survey.
Cool. Yeah, she will. We'll grab it off the logger tape and stick it into the show notes on the podcast, so that if you are very curious and you can't find it for yourself, then that link will be there. 902-405-6000. Very quickly, Laura, Shawn said that he has thousands of people in his district that ride bicycles on a daily basis or on a regular basis. What's it like in District 7? Is it the same?
Yeah, well, I don't just think about people today. I think about people tomorrow. And today, yes, for example, when that the June 10th motion came from Andy Fillmore, I got hundreds of emails, so probably 250 or 300 in the range that wanted to continue investment in cycling, and 20 that did not. So it's just not even close to comparable.
Right. So there's in your opinion, there's and to the data, I haven't read the data, so I can't see it.
Yeah.
But that there's strong support in District 7 for these bike lanes and for this plan.
Yeah, there's a range of views for sure, but if you look at the district, it's got such a range of people. Like, look at all the students. That's an affordable way to get around, and it's how they want to get around. A lot of newcomers are in the district as well. And then you've got established residential areas that some of them feel they would like it and some do not.
902-405-6000 is the telephone number. Let's get back to the phones. We welcome Ralph to the program. Ralph, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Your question, please.
Yes, Shawn Cleary, I wish you'd just resign and go away, because nobody likes you. You're not a very nice person. You're rude all the time. And like you said, people are dumb.
Well,
including myself.
Well, but Ralph, before we get any further,
hold on now.
No, Ralph.
Hold on now. I'm not.
Ralph, this is my show. So when I ask you a question, I will ask Shawn that question, but I don't want this to turn into a yelling match. There was just an election. Mr. Cleary won the election. I know it was close. I know there was lots of candidates, but he is the duly elected councillor for the district. I'm going to bring you back on, Ralph. So you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Your question, please.
No, I wish you guys wouldn't worry about bike lanes. Maybe reduce our taxes. You guys always want more money for this, more money for that. You know what? A lot of people can't even afford to get groceries, and you guys are raising taxes all the time. Why?
I'll ask Laura to answer that question.
So this year, the tax rate did not go up. We set the rate, so that stayed the same. That wouldn't have been how I would have liked it to go, but that's how it went. So we did not raise the tax rate.
But people's tax bill went up, but that was based on provincial assessment, correct?
Going up, yeah. And I think a lot about affordability, and in the topic we've been talking about today, like driving a car is the absolute most expensive way to get around. And I think trapping people into only being able to choose that is not responsible government. So I'm very interested in getting better transit for our city and having options for people to walk and bike safely so they can choose something that's more affordable and good for their health.
Shawn, why do you keep raising my taxes?
I like money, baby. No, tell you what, and this is true.
Comments like that.
This is true at every level. So if you think about your provincial taxes, and federal taxes, except for initiatives designed to cut them, they constantly grow. And so when you think about the ability that a higher level of government has, like a province or a federal government, they can take on debt, they can run deficits. We are very limited. We have fiscal framework we have to stay within provincial legislation. So our debt is relatively limited in terms of what we can take on, and we can't run deficits. So if people want the stuff, if they want their roads paved, if they want new recreation centers, if they want renovations at old recreation centers, if they want libraries, if they want us to buy books, if they want us to have police officers, if they want us to have firefighters, that costs money. Firefighters, police officers, if you look at what's called the Sunshine List, the groups that make over $100,000, about 80% of our Sunshine List are police officers and firefighters. And I don't begrudge them that money, but that keeps going up by 2 and 3 and 4% every year, depending on the judgment of an arbitration panel. Usually we have to be arbitrated into giving them more money. And so even if we did nothing else, taxes still have to go up to pay for those things. We're mostly salaries in the municipality. However, we're always looking at how we can be fiscally responsible. The difference here with Ralph and Ken and Chris is a matter of priorities, not of fiscal responsibility. And the same is true for our mayor. He had no problem for the Windsor Street Exchange to go from about 40 or 50 million-ish to 160 million. It is increased in scope, but it has increased in cost multiple times. And yet he fought hard to make sure that passed. Yet bike lanes was like, no, we got to revisit that. Let's not spend that money on bike lanes. So it's a matter of priorities and a vision for the city. I think Laura and I share a similar vision where we want actually, if we build more bike lanes, if we make it safer for you to walk, roll, and cycle around the city and take transit, we just cut your taxes by about $14,000. And you're going to say, how'd you do that? If you no longer have to own a car, the Canadian Automobile Association puts a new car ownership at roughly $14,000 per year. If I can make you not have to own a car, if it's a choice for you to own a car, I just saved you that money every year.
But is that pie in the sky thinking, Shawn? The reason why I asked that is bike lanes are just kind of are one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, transit's the biggest piece.
Well, but transit aside, our communities are built for cars, right?
Currently.
So are you going to move the big box stores into the urban core?
We already have them. Canadian Tires on Quinpool Road.
There's one.
So if you think about the history of the growth of Halifax over the last 5 or 6 decades.
But you're saying that you're going to save me. You said you're going to save me for it, and I'm all about saving money.
Yeah.
I like saving money. And you told me it was going to be $14,000 because I could get rid of my truck. Well, I live in Clayton Park, right? So if I have to bike into work and there's a connected lane, then maybe that's something I consider.
You don't have to bike.
I also have to take my weekly groceries up that gosh darn hill all the way to my house. Yeah. How does that get me out of my car?
In a number of different ways. So I don't know exactly where you live in Clayton Park, but I don't know how far transit is from your house or how far a walk that is. But you can also take your bike to the bus and put it on the bus. We have bike racks on the front of the bus. And so we have multimodal options for people. You don't have to ride the entire way in. Also, you could do car share. You could do other things. I get my groceries on my bicycle or walking in my backpack. I usually don't go. We're not a family that goes to Costco and buys like a month's worth of groceries at a time.
But a lot of people are.
Yeah, they are. And that's totally fine. That's a choice that they're making. So if they choose to have that, they don't have to, though. They could choose other ways of getting groceries. But if they choose that way, then that's up to them. They could buy an electric cargo bike. So an electric cargo bike is about $5,000, probably $55,000. I don't know what kind of truck you have, but $55,000 than most trucks. And you just saved yourselves a pile of money. It's very easy to ride. It's electric assist. You don't have to break a sweat when you're riding it. And you got tons of space for your Costco.
Though, right?
Not well. It depends on the clothing.
It's fun.
If you listen to the Finns and the Swedes,
I'm
they
Finnish, by the
Are you
way.
really?
Yes.
So good friend of mine.
Careful where you tread.
Good friend of mine told me this about specifically Sweden. This probably applies to
And
Norway
I know where
too.
you're going, but
there
I've
is
been,
no
I've-
bad
I've
weather.
ridden in
There's only
Helsinki
bad
in the
clothing.
wintertime, and it's tabletop flat.
Yeah,
It's not tabletop flat here.
it doesn't have to be, especially with electric assist bike, especially for older people too. In fact, e-bikes are one of the fastest growing segments of bicycles out there.
Laura, comments?
The electric mobility is really a game changer. My family sold our car because we were going away for a year, and we thought we'd come home and buy an electric car. But from what we saw being away, we were like, no, let's go e-bike. So we got a big electric cargo bike, and we use the car share. And we're a family of 5, 3 kids, and we don't need to own a car. So I know we're lucky. I know we live in the urban core, but the idea is to make that achievable for more people. And what sometimes people don't realize with our congestion is it's not that we have to take a ton of cars off the road. We just have to take a small amount off, and that will ease all this congestion. So the more people that you can get to take other modes, it really will help that congestion. It doesn't have to be half the cars. I don't even know what it is, but it's quite a small percentage that will ease getting around for everybody.
We're going to take our last break. There's a lot of callers here. We'll try to get to as many as we can. You're listening to Councillors on the Hot Seat. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. This is Councillors on the Hot Seat. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. Let's see if we can get a few callers in here before we have to stop at the top of the hour. Let's welcome, where are we here? Joe. Joe to the program. Joe, how are you?
Dan, it's good to hear you.
Thank you.
I'll do the Todd thing. I'm well.
Fair enough. Your question, please.
I just want to remind everybody that we're all Canadians, and the conversations that we're having, you couldn't have that in Palestine, right? So we're blessed as heck to be able to debate the stuff that we're talking about. So I hope everybody has a wicked day tomorrow. And when it comes to the bike lanes, like there's so much other stuff to like bring up, but like where I live, I'm out in Sambro. And I took every day I drive the loop pretty much. And all I see is people walking their dogs on the bike lane. If the bike lane went from, say, the 4-way stop, I'm not even sure if it goes past that or not, but the bike lane starts at the Irving, which is 15 minutes from like the 4-way stop where I'm at. And out here, everybody's on Wells. So the streets get done in the wintertime with gravel or whatever the little small stuff is called.
Right. They don't do
so
salt.
Yeah. So they're filled. The bike lanes are filled with like gravel, I'll just say. And I rarely see people on the road. I don't want to get upset about like the money that it's costing us. I know my time's limited, so but nobody drives out here, and it's wicked. Like it's one of the best places you can drive or drive a bike. Like it is fun. The hills aren't too crazy, but they're challenging at sometimes. But the other thing is that you'd have to maintain the bike lanes. You'd have to, like out here, you'd have to get a truck to come out with a sweeper and clear the bike lanes so that they're actually usable for people. And that's an additional cost. And, Shawn, can I say something to you, dude?
Quickly, Joe.
Please,
I got
Joe.
lots of callers.
I don't want to make it personal. Shawn, you cut people, like I listen to Todd all the time, and Dan when you're filling in, you cut people off all the time. You can't have a discussion like that. You can't. Like I listened to you talk to Chris. Ken was a little bit upset, but his point was well made. And yeah, you can't do that, Shawn. Like that's why people don't like you, is because you cut people off. And I'll leave it with that. And like I say, happy Canada Day, and be awesome, everybody.
Thanks, Joe. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Didn't hear a question in there, so let's Move to another one. Jason is a first-time caller, so let's take that one. Jason, how are you?
Not bad, thank you. How are you today?
Good. Your question, please.
I just want to know, would it be an option to maybe put like the sidewalk and a bike path together?
That's called a multi-use
more
path.
Roads, yeah, instead of taking more lanes out, because traffic here is horrendous. I'm from Montreal, and traffic here is outrageous.
I hear that often, Shawn.
Lanes, and
sorry,
I
Jason.
think that'd be a better option, maybe.
Why can't we just extend, or some of the sidewalks are wide enough? Maybe let's start with Laura.
Thank you.
Why can't we use the sidewalks that exist already?
We can do the multi-use paths in places that don't have a lot of both bicycle and pedestrian traffic.
Right.
But they are a problem in urban core where you've got a lot of people walking and a lot of people cycling because they're going at different speeds. So they don't go together.
Maybe something
well.
you could look at in the more suburban areas, Shawn, instead of building a completely new lane, just using the existing sidewalk or widening the existing sidewalk.
So you can't use the existing sidewalk. Under the Provincial Motor Vehicle Act, bicycles are not allowed to ride on sidewalks, so that's illegal. But if you widen it to a certain standard, you can create a multi-use path. We have them all over the place. Chain of Lakes Trail, Bears Road has a multi-use path. Yeah. As I mentioned before, behind Citadel High, that's a multi-use path. So we use them where appropriate. To Laura's point, though, and this is the same thing of the bike lanes in traffic. So if you think about the conflict between users of any right-of-way, you have to consider the safety for each. So if you have a pathway with very few walkers on it, you can have a lot of bicycles on it. But as soon as you have a pathway with a lot of pedestrians, now you're putting those pedestrians at risk by having faster, heavier things move around them. And we all remember from high school physics, force, it's mass times acceleration. And so you're going to end up with more injuries on those. Similarly, if you put a bicycle in a car lane and that car hits the bicycle, that injury is going to be significant.
Car always wins.
Right. And so you have to look at each of the tools you have in the toolbox and use the appropriate ones in the appropriate places. So, yeah, you can use them. But to Laura's point, you have to consider the context that you're using it in. In a suburban area, it may be appropriate to widen a sidewalk if you have enough right-of-way and you own it to build a multi-use path. But, that's going to require counts of pedestrians. It's going to require the estimation of what the cyclists on the path are going to be and the behavior of those individuals in that right-of-way. So it's a complex science and art to actually build the infrastructure that's required.
Thanks for the call, Jason.
No problem.
902-405-6000. Let's grab John. John, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Your question, please.
A comment and a question. Actually, a couple comments. One comment would be the tax increase. The question was, why are you increasing the budget? And the answer from one of the councillors was, we didn't increase the tax rate. But we know the budget went up, and that argument's really weighing thin on a lot of people. We all understand the difference between the rate and the assessment and how they come together to create a revenue stream. So it'd be nice if we never didn't have to hear that again. I agree with another caller earlier, I should say, that Shawn Cleary would benefit from listening a little bit and not interrupting. I find he interrupts an awful lot, and it's quite frustrating because people don't get a chance to finish their question or their comment. My question is, one of the councillors earlier said that she doesn't look at the bike lanes as a cost, rather as an investment. I would like to know what the return is, if you don't mind articulating what the return on this investment is going to be.
Laura?
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, John. Yeah, that's why I was pushing hard for that. I want to see that in our staff report. Dollar value, I mean, there's so many benefits, like there's benefits to public health, so there's less hospital medical care there. The wear and tear on our roads would be much lower if we're treading lightly on them, so that would go down. What else? I don't have all the things in front of me. but they're you can attribute a dollar value to these things. So and just to highlight that this is building something new. It's not maintenance. When we're talking about our car costs, like Shawn mentioned, those are often just maintaining is so much more. This is building something new, trying to transform our city to make it easier to get around for all people. Okay, here's my list. I switched it over. Like noise pollution goes down. You have fewer cars. Tire wear. It's something we don't think of. We get air pollution from exhaust, but also when you drive cars, you get little bits of microplastics going into the air. That's a health concern. There's just so many things that go into these things. Mental health. You feel better when you're walking, biking, rolling than you do sitting angry in your car. All that goes into it. Retail. There is data to show that if you do have good cycling infrastructure on a retail street, you do get more customers from having that there. So that's an economic impact right there.
It gets rid of the argument that there's no parking. Shawn, other than the $14,000 you're going to save me, what's the ROI? What's the return on investment on a bike lane?
Well, so some of the bigger ones that Laura mentioned, a couple of them, but the fact that when you build this cycling infrastructure around pedestrian-oriented main streets, you do increase sales. So increased sales, because commercial taxes is based on income generated, increases the property values and therefore the tax base of those. So the city can actually make more money by letting businesses make more money. But then you also have the relative values of properties, residential properties, that go up as a result of being in a more desirable neighborhood. And so that is more money coming back into the city that can be reinvested into other things, or can give the opportunity for lowering taxes if necessary.
Will the bike lane increase my property value?
So there was a great study done, I think it was RE/MAX last summer, and they looked at neighborhoods all across Canada, and actually Quinpool was the only one in the Atlantic region that won top neighborhood in Canada. When you look at the reasons for that, access to things like parks, schools, cycling infrastructure, feeling safe, etc. And so we know that making a neighborhood more desirable, and there are many factors that go into it, including things like active transportation infrastructure, that make it more desirable and hence make it more valuable. And so if you're a homeowner in one of those and you want to sell out and move somewhere else, you just made some money too. So there are returns to people's health. Therefore, there are returns to the provincial coffers in terms of lower expenditures on healthcare. You've got increased personal financial gains for if you can get rid of a car, if you have more house value, et cetera. And so there's lots and lots and lots and lots of benefits.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. That hour goes by quickly, doesn't it? Thank you very much to District 7 Councillor Laura White for joining us today. Appreciate you coming in.
You are welcome. Pleased to be here.
And always a pleasure, District 9 Councillor Shawn Cleary.
Absolutely.
We'll look forward to our conversations in the future, we'll say. Going to stop down, take a break for the news. When we come back, the open hour will be upon us. Your opportunity to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. I know that there's some significant interest in bike lanes today. Maybe that's something you want to talk about. Also, want to put this out there very quickly for you. I think I said it off the top of the show. I was disappointed this morning when I woke up in our new Prime Minister, who seems to have blinked. Is that the term I can use? With the threat of more tariffs and a lack of discussion over trade and the digital services tax. I don't think he did the right thing. I think he set a dangerous precedent. What do you think? 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. The open hour continues after the news. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand in for Todd. It was feisty? Is that the way we can describe that last hour on Councillors on the Hot Seat, as it is? And, of course, bike lanes dominating the discussion. The open hour continues. The lines are open. There's a couple available for you here if you'd like to call in and give us your comments on the conversation you just heard, or some of the other topics du jour, shall we say. I mentioned it before the break. I'm going to mention it again. If you haven't heard, it began Friday, wasn't it? When we heard from President Trump that he was no longer going to negotiate with Canada because of this digital services tax that he said was unfair to American companies. That went into the weekend. Then last night we learned, or early this morning, we learned that the Canadian government is going to at least rescind that tax for the time being, which was due to be paid out today. in order to try and restart negotiations with the United States. As with this, what is it? July 21st, I think, is the date to get a trade deal done with President Trump and the United States of America. I think it was a bad decision by Mark Carney, and I think I said off the top of the show that to this point I've been okay with the way that Mark Carney has been handling the American question, we'll call it. I think that his Oval Office appearance the first time, and then the way he handled things with President Trump, if there was any real handling going on at the G7 up in Kananaskis. I watched an interview with Mark Carney from the NATO summit with Christiane Amanpour from CNN. She asked the question, is the 51st state discussion over? Carney said, well, yeah. And, well, he didn't say yeah. He kind of danced around it. But then we heard it again this weekend, right, with Trump on with Fox News again, saying that Canada should be the 51st state. And then all of a sudden we dropped this tax, which was going to generate billions of dollars, so that we could start negotiations on a trade deal. I just worry about the precedent that it sets. I worry that now that President Trump knows that if he puts max pressure, which he does with everybody, then Canada's going to fold. It's what the headline on Fox News said this morning. Canada folds. I prefer to say blinked. But I don't know. Does this move negotiations forward, or does this give President Trump all the leverage? 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's get back to the phone lines. Bill's been holding for a long time. Bill, how are you?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Good. Your thoughts, please.
I got a few thoughts. I'll be polite as I can.
Good.
Okay. Now, I was born in Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
I know the streets. I drive an oil truck, and I speak on behalf of all delivery drivers in Halifax for these bike lanes. Nothing against bike lanes. When I had a bike years and years ago, we had to license the bike. $2 the license. Now, having said that, we were told to go by the rules of the road. Now, these guys can do whatever they want. I had a bike running the back of my oil truck. Now, he blamed me for parking there because I was delivering furniture to a house. In the bike lanes on South Park, they're all well and good. When the bike lane guy comes by, driving the bike, they get upset. We are delivering a service to the city of Halifax. What would happen? What would happen if all the companies said we will not deliver to Halifax because of these bike lanes? Now, I know they're doing the best they can. I'm not super smart. I'm street smart. Now, when a bike or any bike hits a car or a truck, who's going to pay for the damage to that car?
Right. Likely the car driver.
Right. Insurance. Now, having said that, why don't they make insurance compulsory for these bikes on bikes? They're driving on the road. They're going through stop signs. They're changing the streets to suit the bikes. On the corner of Oxford and Oak Street, you cannot go straight through Oxford to go to Oak Street. You have to turn left or right because it's a bike lane hidden towards you. Now, having said that, you go down Vernon Street, before, you were not allowed to turn right because you got these stupid islands there that make trucks next to impossible to turn. I went down there one day, and halfway down the street, it turned into a one-way hidden north, and I was driving south. So I'm driving a full tandem truck. Where am I supposed to turn at if I can't go down and turn left or right? Now, since then, they've changed it. They made it a two-way now. Now, the bike lanes are all well and good. Which of the majority use Halifax, bikes or cars? And everybody doesn't have an 8-to-5 job. I know that. I don't have an 8-to-5 job. I'm doing the best I can. And all these bike lanes, I'm being discriminated against because I'm driving a car, period. If a car gets hit by a bike, the bike should have insurance to pay for the damage for that car. You know, think about it. I mean, it's so street smart. Make these guys go by the rules of the law, by the road, and tell them they have to have insurance. Then you'll see the bike lanes slowly go away because people aren't going to drive on them.
Because they won't be able to afford a bike. I think the simple answer to your question, Bill, is that if you start charging people an insurance premium to buy a bike, they'll never get a bike.
Well, what do you gain by not having cars on the road? Tell me that much. Where our country is a four-seasoned country, right or wrong, and bike lanes are going to lose. That guy that killed that bike on the Heron Cove, Bristol Cove Road, I think it was in a garbage truck or an old truck, the first person they blamed was the truck driver. Then he found out that the person came out of that parking lot, and the truck was in the middle of that turn, and that's how he got killed. Now, having said that, too, people do not watch these vehicles. Trucks kill, and so do cars. And they put these outskirt these islands on Colonel Vernon Street and Jubilee Road. I drive a truck. I have to go over to Clear Spring on the other side of the road to make that swing. It's all well and good. But what happens if a car comes down and hits me? Who's at fault? I'm at fault because I'm going on their side of the road. See, it doesn't make sense to me. And it's not. They're going to spend all this money on these bike lanes only halfway through. Now, on the corner of Windsor and Almond, if you hit south down Windsor, they got bike lanes painted, which is great. You go down Almond Street, there's a little restaurant there that's been there for 50 years.
Yep.
They put a bike lane in there, a bike lane. He has to pay for parking. His customers pay for parking to park at the Forum. And if you don't register your car, you will get booted. Now, that's a family-run restaurant, been there for over 50 years. I'm 75 years old, so I've been around the street a few times. Now he has to pay people to the Forum to put his customers over there. Also having that, they got two bike lanes, one on the north side and one on the south side of that street. They have to cross that street through two bike lanes and traffic comes both ways. What happens if one of them gets hit? You know how that guy's going to feel? You know, you're hurting the small businesses. Sure, it's great to have a business, but they're destroying the city and the history.
All right, Bill.
I don't understand.
I got lots of calls I want to get to. I appreciate your time.
All right, thanks a lot. Take care.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 is the number. Where are we here? I've lost my train of thought. Let's go to Kurt. Kurt, how are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Great. Bike lanes. I've called into Todd several times on other issues than that, but I'm really concerned about we need a little bit more attention paid to facts. I'm glad you had a discussion today about surveys and things like that, and I would really like the city, the mayor, to take some leadership and talk about facts. Look at the number of people. We hear so many people calling in and say, I never see anybody on the street. Nobody bikes in the winter. We're have too many hills. I'm 76. I've had a heart attack and cancer and that. I love cycling. I don't have to work anymore. I commuted for 11 years, driving 2 hours a day, and I hated being in my car. I love being there. So I'd appeal to you to start fact-checking when people are just giving their anecdotal. I never see anybody. Try to bring in, I'm not saying it's right.
We just did. Shawn Cleary sat here for an hour and told me that there's going to be 10,000 bicyclists on the road when they connect the lanes. Right, just sat right here.
Sorry. But I'd like to encourage you to do more. I mean, there are some other people out there. Tristan Cleveland, he's got a PhD. He worked in planning. I think I've heard him on there before. And ask them to come in and talk about it. I think it's very important that we have connected cycle lanes so commuting can be done more effectively. I've written council a couple of times. I live in South End, Halifax. And I'd like to see some way. I had to bike down Heron Cove Road when I had to leave my car there. And I just thought how much you would open up affordability in Spryfield if people realized they could bike to downtown Halifax.
Affordability, Kurt, I'm not following you. Houses will get cheaper? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm saying that houses are cheaper out in Spryfield.
Not much.
I don't know that. You can find that out.
I'm telling you, they're not much cheaper. The way that real estate's gone crazy around here, Spryfield's not cheap anymore.
There's more housing and there's more people there that probably would love to be able to get on the bicycle and drive to where they're going on the peninsula. But I'd like to see much more. You know, you just had a truck driver on complaint Thursday. I remember her name, Sandra. Was a bus driver who got involved in this discussion and said, I drive a 42-foot bus, and granted we have bike lanes and things like that. I endorse and support cycles, and, it's changing. I'd love to see this city, and I want to pick up on the hill thing. Like, I can go from the boardwalk to the top of Citadel Hill at 76 years old with an e-bike, and mine is a cargo bike. I can use it when I go shopping and things like that.
Kurt, you talk about Kurt, and I want to get to more callers, Kurt, but the e-bike thing sticks in my craw a little bit, right? You talk about affordability. How much does a cargo bike cost?
I bought one from Costco for $2,000.
See, that's $2,000. My bike's $200. That's a big difference.
Yeah, but how much is your car?
Well, that's just it. But do you ride 12 months a year? Do you ride in the snow and the sleet?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. I want to pick that up. I only ride recreationally,
right,
and you can take me out for that.
And you're 70. You said you're 76 years old.
76-year-old heart attack survivor.
Good for you. That's awesome.
And I will say, my son-in-law, who's in the Navy, has not ridden his car to the Navy. He rides bike, lived up in the very north end, and rides bike. It is possible. People say nobody can ride in the winter here. They do it. And if we had better infrastructure, they'd do it. And he's doing it in Ottawa, where they have better maintenance
and flatter ground.
Well, it is flatter too, but
anyway, Kurt, winter, I don't want to cut you up, but I'm up against the break. I appreciate your comments, sir. I have a good one. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Is there somebody out there that is an active cyclist that is not retired, that rides their bike to work 5 days a week, 12 months a year? Give me a call, because I hear a lot of people that call in here saying that they active cycle, and Shawn Cleary is an example. He's an active cyclist. But I'd like to hear from somebody that's working a 9-to-5 job in the construction industry and the service. I don't care. But somebody that's working each day and tell me that they ride their bike to work 350 days a year, that doesn't live downtown and goes to work on it every day. I'd love to hear those comments. 902-405-6000. The bike lane continues after the break.
Hi, I'm Ken Shea, President and CEO of East Coast Credit Union. Imagine banking where you're the VIP. At East Coast Credit Union, you actually are. Enjoy friendly service from financial experts who care about your goals. And feel good knowing your bank gives back to the community, supporting bursaries, food programs, small businesses, and financial literacy. Why just bank when you can bank with purpose? Learn more at eastcoastcu.ca.
It's the Todd Veinotte Show with Dan Ahlstrand on 95.7 News Radio, Halifax.
Todd always tells me that when he does the open hour and he needs to know something, he just kind of throws it out to the listeners, and they always come through. And just like I did, we're very pleased to welcome Kate to the program. Kate, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Dan. How are you?
I am well. You're a commuter cyclist.
Yep.
And you work
20 years now. Summer and winter.
Do you work 5 days a week?
Yeah.
How many people do you see on the bike lanes when you travel in every day?
Well, the route that I have to go to work, there aren't any bike lanes. There never have been.
Oh my goodness! Wow, you're braver than I am. I to put it all into context, I am a former motorcycle rider, and I stopped riding an HRM because of the crazy drivers. I can't imagine what it's like for you.
Well, I find that most of the drivers are very respectful and generous.
Right.
But having started to listen to the Todd Veinotte Show, I am much more frightened because there is so much anger out there, and I think that's a shame.
Kate, how many are you exclusive? Do you have a group of people that ride every day? Are we missing the boat here? I get that comment all the time. Well, you're not talking to cyclists. How many people are out there that are like you, that are long-term, 12 months a year commuter cyclists?
Well, I don't have a large group of friends, but I would say that, a dozen of them are winter cyclists, summer cyclists, rain, night cyclists,
right,
snow cyclists. And as far as the affordability is concerned,
sure,
believe me, I used to have a car, but I decided at 40 to park it for a year and see what I could do. I live in south side of Dartmouth, and I worked in Burnside, and I thought I'm going to try riding the bus and taking my bicycle and see what I can do. And after a year, I didn't want to go back to driving. I was able to get rid of my car. My husband and I did the same thing. We sort of gave ourselves that challenge. And within 2 years, we were able to pay off our mortgage.
Wow.
Now, that is a big freedom, I tell you.
You're not kidding. You are not kidding. Shawn, Councillor Cleary said that that we'll see tens of thousands of bikes on the road if we have a connected network. Do you agree with him?
Well, maybe not tens, but maybe 10,000. I take the bus also. I also have a car share. Truth be known, I do still use that once in a while. And I see a lot more cyclists on the road now than I ever have done before. And I think that that's because the infrastructure has opened up and there are people who are willing to give it a shot.
Kate, great call. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Thanks for your show.
All right, 902-405-6000. Let's see if we can get one more in here. Chris, how are you?
Hello, you there, Dan?
I am here. You are an avid...
Hey, how are you? I've got my radio off here. I thought I was going to have it on. It was going to be blasting in my ear.
You say that you're an avid... Are you a daily cyclist?
I am I'll tell you what. I'm more of a fair weather guy, but I have two people I know specifically that do the year-round thing. But I just find it a little bit dangerous in the snow and the ice. So I'm 58, so I kind of have moved away from that thing. When I was younger, I was kind of crazy. And I don't say that people are crazy to do ride, because some people have to ride, Dan, because that's their mode of transportation. And I'll try to keep it as short as I can.
Sure.
I've spoken to you a couple times before. It's been a long time since I spoke to you last. But anyway, where I was going to go with this is I've been living in Halifax all my life. I've been to some places that have a little bit more bicycle infrastructure. I think it's great that people, like people say some stuff about Shawn Cleary. I think they're all good people. Like the leaders are good. All the city councilors are good. But I think everybody has a different sort of little perspective of how things should work. And I think that Halifax is just, I used to work for transit, and I'll tell you something. I've driven buses for a long time. I bike, and I also drive a car. And I feel that a lot of this stuff about, well, we need more bike lanes, or no, we don't need bike lanes. I think the bottom line is people just need to be a little more educated on how cyclists should be looking out for things when they're on the road, or how motorists should be a little more careful of cyclists when they're on the road. I really kind of believe that, these tens of millions of dollars maybe could be spent elsewhere, maybe. Are you still there, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I sort of feel like, for me, I think it's great, but a lot of it starts one place and ends in another. I bike in the morning to work. I use that BLT trail part of the way into work. I work on the peninsula, and it's great because part of my ride is on the trail and part of it is in the city streets. But I'll tell you something that I've learned in nearly 60 years. I got around easier when there was more tarmac. And I think one of the big issues, if you look at the corner of where Spring Garden, where the Lord Nelson is, or let's say up to South Street, where the other side of the where CBC used to be there on the corner.
Yep.
And the bike lane network that goes down, I guess, right down to the south end. And they say that they're safer, but I can tell you, as somebody who drives bigger vehicles, if you're on that little section where they have those bike lanes, the raised pavement put in with all the little concrete barriers and all that stuff, if I'm driving a truck down there and there's a bus coming the other way, I can't get through. And I think what's happened is again, the enthusiasm of the bike lanes is great. I just think that I got around better when I was in my 20s around Halifax, and I felt perfectly fine. The lady that was on a few minutes ago, I feel most people are good. Most people in cars are great. No one's really looking to run you down. I've only ever had a few people yell out the window at me. I won't repeat what they said, but I've had a few people over the years say things, but those are people that just are not happy people, I think, in general. But when you're going down that road and you're in your car, for instance, and there's a bike on that path on South Park Street, and all those cars are parked, you can't even see the cyclist, Dan. Like, I've come around that
I agree. You know what, Chris, I agree with you. When you go by the VG, the backside of the VG, right?
Yes.
And you're turning on, and you're turning on to go around the side of the VG. The name of the road's escaping me right now.
University
Avenue, yes. Or the other side. The other side's even worse.
It is.
Like when you're not maybe it's because I'm not accustomed to those bike lanes being there. I'm always worried that because it's you're watching the intersection, you're watching the pedestrians, you're watching the and the last thing that I check is the right side mirror, and then that bike lane's there, right?
And there's also, Dan, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the crosswalks that have the green lines on them are meant for the cyclist has the right of way.
Yes.
Well, if I can't see past those cars behind me, and I go to make that turn, and God forbid one of my fellow people hits me, I'm on the hook.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like and then the cyclists are and I'm not generalizing here. There's a lot of cyclists that I see on the sidewalks and they're on the pavement. And I've yelled at people saying, "Stay on the road, get off the sidewalk." And I've had them tell me to, I'll leave it to your imagination.
Right.
But you're supposed to be on. A guy mentioned about the insurance on bikes. I remember years ago they ran that for a while for licenses. But I'm insured as a driver in my car, and I'm not insured as a cyclist. And that's a good point. I'm not saying that you have to go out and spend $100 a month for bike insurance, but there should maybe be something. And I've never really thought of it until I hear a lot of people calling in and getting different opinions of, cyclists use the road too, but we're not really causing a lot of damage to the asphalt or, that type of thing. And yes, all the arguments of, it'll be cleaner air, like the city councillor there, Laura, is it Laura? Lori?
Yes, Laura Wright.
Yeah, she said some really great things. And, Shawn's done his homework and sees these numbers. I think this whole thing about tens and thousands of people being on the road, I don't know, man. It sounds like a kind of a stretch to me. I mean, we're not in California. We're not in Mexico. We're not in a place where the climate is really friendly to cyclists.
Chris, I'm up against the break, buddy. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, I know, man. I know. Thanks for letting me on. We'll talk again.
You betcha. 902-405-6000 is the number. The open hour continues after the news. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand filling in for Todd, who's enjoying himself an extra long weekend. He'll be back in the big chair on Wednesday, and we look forward to his return. Telephone lines are open, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Everything works. Couple of lines open. Let's try to get to as many calls as we can over the next 30 minutes. I know lots of you have been waiting for some time, so let's get to the phones. And we welcome David to the program. David, how are you?
Hi, Dan. Yeah, I just want to talk about the digital services tax and the Liberal government, for now at least, rescinding it. And I mean, yeah, it's problematic because it's a legitimate tax. Like we know, sort of ad revenue for traditional news sources has been declining, and it's sort of being free on the internet and stuff like that. But also a lot of the companies sort of existing outside of Canada, shipping products into Canada and not sort of paying their fair share of taxes in that regard.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, in terms of the government's move, like it could be a bargaining chip. Like they say, we'll rescind it for now. And then when they get into negotiations, sort of include that and possibly get some sort of deal based on, the lost revenue or some share of that. But the other sort of aspect is, well, Trump himself owns a social media company. And you look at his sort of inner circle, they're all sort of social media people and stuff like that.
Well, so wasn't David, I don't mean to cut you off, but wasn't the boss of Amazon and the boss of Meta and the boss, we know the boss of Twitter, or X, weren't they all at the inauguration?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the inauguration and stuff like that, but from what I've heard, yeah.
Funny thing about that, huh?
Yeah, and that's it. And so it's sort of like, like obviously you have someone who's a president of a country making decisions sort of based on what's good for him, not sort of, the needs of the nation and stuff like that, where I'm sure in the United States, sort of, digital ad revenues and all that kind of stuff that, it's a problem as well too. So, but because it conflicts with some of his friends, then that law sort of don't get acted upon, and which is kind of funny because that's sort of the whole history of this sort of, the right to due process and all this kind of thing. It was basically, it wasn't that we decided we all loved freedom and we all wanted everybody to have their fair share and freedom of speech and all that. It was to limit the powers of the king because, if you opened a business and that business became successful and that threatened somebody else who had an established business and was friend of the king or whoever, they could just go to them and get you arrested or your business declared illegal or whatever. So we sort of went to this rules-based system that would sort of limit the powers of the monarch. And here we are today, sort of, someone sort of ruling in that sort of same manner where they sort of just only consider their own needs and not the sort of broader self-interest. So, I don't know. It's a bad precedent. I mean, the Liberal government could have just said like, well, we'll consider removing that tax, but we'll wait to see what comes out of the negotiations and leverage it as a bargaining chip in that way rather than sort of, just rescinding it, giving Trump this apparent victory and emboldening him possibly in the future. So,
David, appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
902-405-6000. See, the way that I look at it is, is, to David's point, Trump said that he wasn't going to negotiate as long as that tax was on. So I don't know if we could have said, well, we'll take a look at it, maybe. But how many times in the last 6 months, 8 months, have you heard that Donald Trump is a transactional president? Right? He's defined it. He is transaction-based. We've seen him use maximum leverage countless times. Right? I'm putting X amount of tariff on something. Oh, wait, we'll pause it. So I'm trying to get the right word here, by canceling this tax, you've now shown President Trump that kind of pressure works, right? So when we get to these negotiations that are supposed to be done by the 21st to the 28th or something like that in July, you don't think he's got that in his back pocket now? How often has the U.S. president brought the milk industry up during his ongoing tirades about Canada and Canada being the 51st state? He said it again on Friday, that we've got this ridiculous 400% tariff, tax, whatever you want to call it, on the U.S. milk industry. Mark Carney's been very clear saying that supply management is not on the table. So if this comes up as part of that discussion and Trump doesn't like what Prime Minister Carney says about it, do you think it's out of the realm of possibility that he's not going to do the same thing? He's talked about the banking industry. Incorrectly, I might add, but he's talked about the banking industry. It comes up in discussion. Doesn't like what Mark Carney has to say. We're not talking anymore. I'm going to put a tariff on you. It's worked in the past. Is this good for Canada, bad for Canada? I think, who knows? That being said, the precedent's set now, right? You give an inch, as the old saying goes. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Let's welcome John to the program. John, how are you?
Good, Dan. Yourself?
I'm okay. What's on your mind?
Just calling in about the whole bike lane thing. Now, I'm going to start off by saying I'm not anti-bike, but really all this comes down to opportunity costs. We don't have limitless amounts of money. So, we're talking about moving people outside of cars, and there should be more emphasis on the transit. And I'll give you a prime example. The weekend, you had 3 great concerts downtown, 20-something thousand people went every night. And I live in Dartmouth, and me and a few other thousand people walked down to get the ferry. And the ferry shut down 11:30. The last ferry for 11:45 was full.
You're not kidding.
And no, I'm not. And this is a big concert weekend. You got the tattoo on the go. You know what I mean? So I find it a bit disingenuous, I guess, and I think the bike thing is a little bit of a cult. Everybody's hardcore into it, but who's for it, and everybody who's against it is hardcore against it. But, if you got $100 million to blow, or spend, I should say, blow is not the right word. Why are we paying? If we can't get ferry captains, pay ferry captains more money. Get to keep the ferry open on the weekends or all the time.
Especially when there's big events on like this weekend, right? Like, holy smokes.
Sure, exactly. 60,000. Like I'm sure when I got to the ferry terminal on Friday night, there had to be 1,000 people there.
Right.
We walked down to get the ferry, and you're told 11:30. Sorry, the last one's 11:45, and that one's full. So can't get a cab, then there's no buses around. So, I ended up paying $55 for an Uber because, they're dynamic pricing. You know how they work.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Surge pricing, they call it.
Surge pricing, that's right. So I guess my point is, if we got the money to spend and we're trying to move people around a little bit better, maybe we need to take a more holistic approach to this and say, where's the best bang for the buck? And if we can get transit figured out, well, then maybe let's look at more bike lanes, I guess that's my point.
Fair point, John. Appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, Dan.
902-405. Really? The ferry stopped at midnight? Wow. Wonder if somebody from HRM can give us a call and Explain why that was when they knew that there was going to be, as John said, thousands of people looking to get home that night. They did a really good thing on Friday where they had free transit that went down, that people were able to go downtown and take part in the first day of that concert and all the other things that are going on. But they shut the ferries off at midnight? Huh. 902-405-6000 is the number. We're going to stop and take our last break, try to get to as many calls as we can on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. This is the open hour, Manic Monday, as we used to call it. 902-405-6000 is the number. See if we can get in a few calls here before the top of the hour. We will begin with Robert. Robert, how are you?
Good, Dan. How are you today?
Good. What's on your mind, sir?
I live on a Valleyfield Freeway in Dartmouth, or some might call it Valleyfield Road. So there's three gutters here, and one has been knocked down for about 3 months. I called 311 16 times.
How many?
My neighbor 16.
16 times, and you haven't got anything done yet?
No, 3 times for my neighbor and other people on the road. So this lady I see, this guardrail that's laying there has bushes growing up to it that you wouldn't even know it's there.
Wow.
And so 2 little guys, they were double riding one of those e-bikes on my sidewalk. And, they're quiet as heck. And this older lady was wearing headphones, and they startled her. So she kind of went into the sidewalk, cutting her ankle on the falling guardrail.
Jeez.
I've reached out to my counselor, who said he would look into it. My second phone call wasn't answered. It's just dangerous. That's it. That's pretty much it. I just don't know what it takes. So now my friend who lives in Portland Hills gave me, let's go to the bike, those green bike things that get run over by plows?
Yes, the bollards, yeah.
Yeah. We have the little green ones.
Yep.
So I got 7 of them. So I'm about to go out and bolt them to this guardrail pointing up. So anyone that lives on Valleyfield Freeway, that's not a bike lane. It's to warn people that there's a guardrail under all this bush. So maybe the counselors or maybe somebody, but it's sad that I got to take it into my own hands for the safety of the citizens of Dartmouth.
Robert, I wish you the very best, sir.
All right. It's not a bike lane.
Not a bike lane.
No, it's not a bike lane. It's a warning.
902-405-6000. Vanessa's telling me in my ear that from a little bird that it called her, said that that guardrail that Robert was just talking about is on the list and is to be replaced. I can't say it's going to be replaced today, or tomorrow because it's a holiday, but it's on the list and apparently it's going to be replaced. So Robert, you might want to hold off bolting the green bollards onto her, at least for now. 902-4. The Todd Veinotte Show gets things done. I'll tell you that. I will tell you that because the powers that be are listening because they tell me they are. Usually it's when Todd says something wrong, they tell me that they are, but they are. And if you want something done, like Robert just said, I'll bet you by this time next week that Robert's going to call you and say, you know what, Todd, because I won't be here, they fixed it. Let's welcome Roy to the program. Roy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Okay. Well, starters, I went to the concert Friday night.
How was it?
And it's the first time. It was awesome.
Good.
It was the first time I've been downtown. In a long time. I live in Beaverbank.
Okay.
But me and my wife and my kid, we went to the concert and we left early, and it was the first time I had actually witnessed what the bike lanes look like. With the little green stickers and so on.
Don't have a lot of them in Beaverbank, I assume.
Not many, no. But anyway, the point being is that we left our house at 3 o'clock to get downtown. Gates opened at 4. Anyway, we got home at 10 to 1 in the morning. We drove. We went to underground parking, but we had no idea what we were doing. We couldn't get around down there. We couldn't turn left. We couldn't turn right. We couldn't get through a light. There was 22,000 people walking and so on.
Right.
And then, as you mentioned earlier, the ferry shut down. I mean, that's ridiculous. with that many people and that kind of excitement going on downtown, you would think that there'd be a better way. My point being is that I don't understand bike lanes, and I don't understand commuters, and I don't know how people get around downtown anymore.
Roy, appreciate the call, sir.
Yep.
902-405-6000. I'm hoping that somebody from Halifax Transit is listening today and can maybe shed some light onto that, because it and maybe I'm only getting half the story, which is entirely possible. But it doesn't make a lot of sense that if, like Roy said, there was 22,000 people at an event on the Garrison grounds that got out, I think it ended at 11 or 11:30. I'm not sure. I wasn't there. And by the time they filter down to the ferry terminal, it's going to take some time with all those people on the road, that they didn't have any ferries on after midnight. I get it. I understand that you know, they have budgets and we have all that stuff, but when there's a special event on like that, one would think, right? That makes sense. Michael. Are you there, Michael? Hello, Michael. I'm going to put you on hold and let Vanessa try and find you there. Let's go to Peter. Peter, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. The show's really rocking this morning. Well done.
Appreciate it, sir.
3 quick points.
Sure.
One is that I grew up on military bases. Every spring, anybody who wanted to drive a bicycle had to take a test. It was called a bike rodeo. Then they were issued a license plate, little license plate.
I do remember those.
Yep. Right, and that way, when you screwed up on a bike, you could be reported.
Right.
And the MPs would show up and deal with you.
All those evil MPs.
And the other thing is, people have to realize is that, and it's been pointed out a number of times today, people that are driving bicycles downtown should be, we're not talking, $1,000 worth of insurance, but they do need some form of insurance, because when they smash into your vehicle, you pay. And in most cases, the damage is less than $1,000, which means you pay out of your pocket. And that has to be addressed. And it seems that everybody in town council has forgot that we've got something here in Halifax called January, February, March.
Yes, sir. It gets kind of icy out there.
Well, and I'm like you. There's no way that I'd drive into the city on a bicycle or a motorcycle.
Yeah,
the other quick question I have is, how are building permits being approved in the downtown sector? I was in last week. I counted over 6 cranes for new apartments.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know, what's the traffic plan? How do these permits get issued to build 10, 15-story buildings, apartments, and there's no traffic plan that goes along with them? Where do they expect the people are planning on parking and driving? How are they planning on moving around? Because like you said, this is not Mexico. This is not Texas. This is Canada. And we have sometimes 3 feet of snow on the ground.
No, I get it. No, the snow removal and snowbanks and everything else. Peter, I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know if they have to submit a traffic plan or not.
I can't imagine that they can get approval without one. And one more thing.
Sure.
I do agree with you that anybody who's supporting Mark Carney and got taken in by the Elbows Up campaign, that's been changed to the Bend Over campaign.
Well, now that's not, Peter, I never said that. I said that I was disappointed in the way he handled this last thing. I think I framed the statement I made, and I appreciate the call, Peter. I think I framed it saying that up until now I've been reasonably satisfied with the way he's been handling things on the national, international level. But this last thing is kind of disappointing to me, and I don't think it has anything to do with what, I'm not going to repeat what you said, because, well, I'm just not going to. We're just about out of time. I've got a ton of emails here I want to read just because I get accused of not reading them. This one from John says, people drive cars year-round. Small percentage of bikers don't. Keep challenging them. That would have been to Shawn Cleary. False equivalency. Emergency vehicles use the roads too. That was to my comment. Well, like we were spending 5% of the budget on something that 2% of the people use. Dell's bike. This is from, who's this from? Richard. Dell's bike data capture was shown to be double sampling. I don't know if that's the case. Using the busiest spots possible. Called it broken bias. This one is from Rob. All due respect to Councillor White, this distinction between an investment and a cost is a meaningless one. Just to justify spending that is unpopular. They're all costs. That one from Rob. This from Don on the digital services tax that we were just talking about. It says, Dan, you're absolutely spot on during your opening remarks this morning. Not often I get that email, is it, Vanessa? I was so disgusted when I heard that Carney canceled the digital services tax all because Trump effectively told him to. I even emailed my MP for the first time ever. I was so upset. Maybe even being embarrassed as a Canadian is a better description. Well, I wouldn't go that far. Once again, we have leaders who lack the courage to do the right thing. I know that Trump is the king of America. I didn't know that we are now the 51st state. Let's hope that that never happens. This one from Alan. Bike lanes will not be used in Halifax unless the bridge access on the Halifax side of the McDonald Bridge is fixed. If you're going to spend the money to encourage cycling in the city, then that's where the focus should be. And to wrap it up, this one from Lee. If 86% of the people support bike lanes, let's have a binding plebiscite on them. What's Councillor Cleary afraid of? Based on the fact that he only got 28% of the vote, I'd be surprised if his own riding supported them. Thank you to each and every one of you that picked up the phone and joined the conversation over these last 2 hours. Fantastic comments today. Fantastic show. We're off tomorrow, so make sure that you save them up. And hopefully somebody from Halifax Transit will get in touch with us or with Todd on Wednesday and can explain why those ferries were stopped at midnight during those big concerts on the weekend. We're going to stop and take another break. Don't fret, though. We've still got an hour to go on the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back after the news. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is Hour 3. I'm Dan Alstrand, in for Todd, who is enjoying himself an extra long weekend as we gather, is gather the right word, to celebrate Canada Day. And I know that many of you, and again, I think I mentioned it off the top of the show, but congratulations to all those HRCE students who today is, I guess it's the officially the last day, which is like I go to school and pick up my report card and then have to explain to my parents why my grades were where they at. Is that what this day is called? Anyway, no, normally it's a good day for people. I just have flashbacks with mine. But there are like many different events planned through this past weekend and then today. And then, of course, tomorrow, the big day with all kinds of events and communities. And one of the events that has become kind of synonymous with celebrating events like Canada Day and so on and so forth is the annual fireworks display that happens, in our case, over the Halifax Harbor. But are we really sure what's going on with the fireworks when they explode? Numerous studies have documented a multitude of negative effects of fireworks. Yeah, most people are unaware with the human respiratory health dangers, especially to kids. A recent scientific study uncovered some very disturbing information about the effects of firework on human respiratory health. The report is called Fireworks Smoke Impacts on Urban Air Quality and Disposition in the Human Respiratory System. Very pleased to welcome into the show today to give us a little bit of context on this is the founder of Fireworks Hurt, and that's Dr. Hugh Chisholm. Dr. Chisholm, how are you, sir?
I'm very good, thank you. But just to clarify, I'm not the founder. I am a member of the steering committee.
Fair enough. Well, we'll get it all sorted out here. Member of the steering committee, Dr. Hugh Chisholm. I guess, Dr. Chisholm, the first thing is, and I know we've talked in the past about fireworks and its effects on things like animals and those kind of things. But is it a significant concern about some of the stuff that these things release when they explode and their impact on our health?
It's very significant, and it's something that I think a lot of people are not really very clued in about, because fireworks are part of our culture. They've been used to celebrate events like Canada Day and New Year's Eve and so on for decades. And it's important for people to realize that they're not harmless. They do have side effects to not just the environment and wildlife, but to humans as well. And our group has, in the past, we've sort of focused on the effect on animals because that's how our group was initially formed. But over time, we've also mentioned about the effects on wildlife and the risk for fires and so on. But we've decided that we've missed the boat by not pointing out the fact that these contain significant risks for human health, especially children, especially pregnant women, especially older people, and especially people with lung disease. According to the Canadian Lung Association, 1 in 5 Canadians has a serious respiratory disease, and those people are at risk for the ingredients in fireworks.
Dr. Chisholm, what's the bad parts of the fireworks? I can hear people in my head saying, "Well, I've been watching fireworks, doctor, for my entire life, and I'm fine." What is it? Is it cancer causing? What is it?
They can contribute to cancer. They can contribute to conditions like asthma and COPD, tuberculosis, cystic fibrosis, respiratory disease syndrome. All of those are things that the particulate matter that are released by fireworks can cause problems with. And there's other sort of hidden things that are perhaps not things that are going to make you sick today, but that will accumulate in the environment. There's gases, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide. There are metals that give fireworks those pretty colors. Metals don't go away. These, you look at a fireworks display and you think, well, that stuff is just going to blow away. Well, there's no such thing as a way when it comes to some of the long-lasting chemicals that are in fireworks, especially the heavy metals that, are things that they maybe land in the water or on the soil and they end up in our food. And so we're now ingesting these things that will accumulate in our body over time. There are things called perchlorates that give the explosion to fireworks, and those have been shown to impact the development of the thyroid gland and suppress the thyroid gland. So, maybe lead to some long-term health implications with your thyroid gland not functioning properly. And who that has a thyroid problem might think back to, well, gee, I watched fireworks, I had fireworks in my past and so on, and makes that link. But, a lot of these health issues are silent things that creep up on people over time. And maybe it's not one fireworks event that contributes to it, but, maybe there are lots of things going on in the environment, including fireworks. And this is one thing that we can do away with. It's not something we need. It's something that, has become part of our culture, but it's one of those things that I guess as a human society, we need to think about, do we need this anymore? And to be clear, our group is not opposed to the Canada Day fireworks that are set off, by the municipality. We're more concerned about the consumer fireworks that people buy at the local, big box store and set off in their backyard or at the local ball field or over the lake. And, those are again, completely unnecessary and contribute in all kinds of bad ways to things that we just don't need to be doing anymore.
And you may have already just answered the question, Doctor, but it's, the question I had was, well, I only go and watch this thing once a year and it lasts 20 minutes. But it's not necessarily those big scale fireworks displays like the one we're going to see here tomorrow over the harbor, if it doesn't rain. But it's the other ones. It's the ones that you have more access to.
Well, they all contribute in their own way. The thing about the Canada Day and the New Year's type events is they're maybe once or twice a year, whereas the consumer fireworks, this time of the year, virtually every single night, somebody somewhere in Nova Scotia is setting off fireworks, and it's reached the point where not only is it creating health risks, but it's upsetting pets, it's upsetting wildlife, it's upsetting horses. The Hatfield Farms folks have just put out a social media request asking people not to set off fireworks near their horses. And so, more and more things are starting to impinge on the health and safety of people and animals. And we just had a fire ban a few days ago, and people were setting off fireworks during a fire ban. Maybe they don't realize there's a $25,000 fine associated with doing that, but it's just plain stupid. Just, think about the fire we had here in Tantallon a couple of years ago and the effect of that. Imagine if your fireworks, started something like that. So people just need to sit back and think about this and realize that maybe we don't need it anymore.
Dr. Chisholm, would be remiss if I didn't ask you about pets and fireworks. With tomorrow being Canada Day and there will be fireworks, is there anything that you recommend we do with our pets to try and ease that anxiety that comes associated with those?
I'm glad you asked that because it's really important for people to take precautionary steps. And there are so many things you can do. And rather than try and list them all here because there's a lot of them, if you go to our website, it's called banfireworksnovascotia.org. I know it's a lot, but banfireworksnovascotia.org. We have a section on our website that talks about fireworks and pets and also horses, because horses are very susceptible to the effects of fireworks. And so planned events like the Canada Day event and New Year's Eve and whatnot, pet owners and livestock owners can take the necessary precautions to help to try and mitigate the effects of that on their animals. But consumer fireworks, unless the neighbor tells you they're going to do it, they happen, just randomly, and it's very difficult to take those precautionary steps. So definitely something to be aware of for sure.
Dr. Chisholm, is always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the time, Dan.
That is Dr. Hugh Chisholm. Fireworks hurts. We're going to stop and take another break. When we come back, the grades it's report card day. This is appropriate, is it not? Nova Scotia scores a top grade in the CFIB's 2025 Internal Trade Report Card. Our friend Duncan Robertson will be joining us when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Hallstrand. Back in a minute. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Very quickly, want to set the record straight. I made a comment earlier in the show when somebody was talking about growing up on a base and that they had to do the bike rodeo, and that if you got caught doing something stupid on your bike, the MPs would be able to write you up. And I said those evil MPs, and people are like, well, don't pick on the military police, Dan. Well, I kind of can, because it used to be one. So I just wanted to put that out there. And if I offended anybody that's wearing the red beret or such today, I apologize to y'all. Comes from a place of love. 902-405-6000 is the number. And, it's report card day, as I mentioned, and that means that there's a lot of nervous people going to get some paper at schools today. Do they still do that, Vanessa? You know more than I do. They still give you cards, like actual report cards, or they email them to your parents ahead of time? Okay.
Oh, and then they also get them through.
So, do they still give you the thing you had
paper?
to get?
They do get them. They do get transcripts.
And then do you still have to sign them? Do you still have to get your parents to sign them when you get it, or is that just me? I hear you.
Hey, Dan, are you there?
I can hear you. Is your headphones turned down? Okay. Vanessa's having technical problems. Go figure. Make sure you turn the mic off. There you go. It's all good. Anyway, yes. Anyway, my joke has been ruined now. Anyway, it's report card day, so it is appropriate that we got this report card today, and we're very pleased to welcome back into the show from the CFIB, Duncan Robertson. Duncan, you remember report card day?
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago for me, I guess. But,
it was always that, you should really kind of know what your remarks are, but it was always that nervous thing, right? Like, oh my, how am I going to explain this? Maybe exactly. My experience was different than everybody else's. What do you think?
No, I always had some nervousness too. But for Nova Scotia, though, don't have to be nervous.
Look at you segueing. You want to take the show over? I'll take the rest of the day off. How's that? Anyway, yes.
Hey.
Let's get on with what we're doing here. Duncan is from CFIB Atlantic. They've put out their 2025 internal trade report card, and Nova Scotia gets the top of the class. With regards to this, I don't know if we should be surprised given how in front of the cameras the Premier's been with his trade barriers. Did that weigh into it?
Yeah, I know there's been a clear political priority for removing interprovincial trade barriers here in Nova Scotia, reflected in this year's report card. And a big part of that is Nova Scotia tabling their Free Trade and Mobility Within Canada Act that was tabled, passed, and now in force. So they're really first out of the gates and really getting some good progress already. And it's being reflected this year, and we're challenging other provinces to follow Nova Scotia's lead here, which is always good to see.
Duncan, maybe you can answer this question for me, and if you can, I understand, but why were these trade barriers put into place in the first place?
Well, there's a couple of reasons here. There's been old-fashioned protectionism over the years. There's also been a lack of political leadership. But I think we're really seeing an improvement this year over the past 8 to 12 months. We've really seen the momentum that we've been looking for. Here at CFIB, we've been looking at this issue for decades. And I think since the Canada Free Trade Agreement was signed 8 years ago, I think this was the next biggest thing. And we're really seeing some progress. But of course, there's lots of announcements, but there has to be follow-through, and that's really what we're holding government's feet to the fire today and going forward, because we don't want just a big announcement and that's it. We really need to see real regulatory work on the ground, and that's what we'll be looking for in this report card and going forward as well.
What does this mean for the mom and pop shop? Is this going to give them access to more goods to sell, or maybe cheaper goods to sell?
Yeah, well, 6 in 10 of our members actually see removing interprovincial barriers as creating new opportunities for their business, so being able to expand easier into other jurisdictions. Since now there hasn't really been that incentive to see where you can invest to expand, and now that we're creating kind of some freer trade here in Nova Scotia with other provinces, will allow these businesses to see where they can go, see where they can expand. Of course, there'll be a long-term gain, but now we really see some incentives to try and get into other markets. And also with the ongoing uncertainty south of the border, it seems like every week it's something different. 62% of our members are looking to shift to domestic markets. So while it's more difficult to trade south of the border, making it easier to trade east and west is going to be very important over the next few months and years.
Now we go to the side of the report card that I'm more familiar with, and that's the D's and the F's. Still, CFIB still identifying here in Nova Scotia some issues with internal trade, with barriers to that.
Exactly. So there's a few things here. So important to point out Nova Scotia's Free Trade and Mobility Within Canada Act. So that's with reciprocal jurisdiction. So it's kind of a I will if you will approach. So when we look at exceptions to the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, if Nova Scotia says that a province is reciprocal, doing the same thing that Nova Scotia is doing, they'll eliminate all their CFTA exceptions with that province if that province will do the same to Nova Scotia. But when we grade it overall, because it isn't across Canada, we do grade them an F here, so definitely some improvements on removing those exceptions to the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Also looking at some other barriers that our members have put forward, different WCB regulations. Now, the province has done some work on things like OH&S. Friday, there was the announcement on improving interprovincial direct-to-consumer trade of alcohol beverages, which is something we've been looking for years now. So that's coming forward in Nova Scotia, which is good news. But there's always improvement. I know no matter when I was in school, even if I got an A, I wanted to see if I could get that A+. So there's definitely some room for improvement here still in Nova Scotia, and ensuring that the changes they're making over the past few months, that's going to result in on-the-ground benefits for small businesses in the years ahead. That's something we're going to be looking for sure.
Duncan, a little bit off topic here, but we are heading into July as of tomorrow, which is kind of the heart of the summer travel season, summer tourism season. You obviously are in touch with your members an awful lot here in Atlantic Canada. What are they telling you? Are they optimistic about the summer season?
Well, they're expecting revenue in general to be the same as last year, which might not seem like a bad thing. But when we do see the cost of doing business increase, that's kind of worrying, because we would want that revenue to match the cost of doing business. We also did a public opinion survey, and we did see that consumers as well are saying they're probably going to spend the same as last year. So there won't be that growth in revenue that we'd like to see. So that adds a little bit of uncertainty. And with the overall trade, or not trade, but the issues with the states, et cetera, that is adding some uncertainty to an already uncertain sector. You think hospitality, retail, businesses that really depend on those summer months. So they're going into it a bit uncertain. Hopefully that kind of elbows up and Canada First mentality will help people support local businesses and get them through the end. That's really what we're going to be hoping to see. And, July 1st is a better day than any to really support your local businesses. So we're hoping that provides some good support for our local businesses and our communities.
Right. I read a story this morning saying that that Canadian-made stuff and Canadian logoed stuff is kind of flying off the shelves, even from people from away, that they're all kind of getting on board with our ongoing struggles with our friends south of the border.
Yeah, it's good to see. And basically, whenever you have a chance to support a local business, no matter what, you're supporting a local business in that local community, supporting others as well. So no matter, what they're selling, if it's a local business, we're definitely encouraging people to get in there, support local, because 66 cents out of every dollar spent at that local business stays in the community for every dollar spent. So that's always important to find your local business, your favorite business, and support them tomorrow for sure.
And for sure, get out on a patio, right?
Hey, patios, yes, for sure. Hopefully they're not costing these businesses too much with the fees, but that's, I think, a topic for another discussion for sure.
You got it. Duncan, appreciate it, sir.
Anytime. Thank you.
That is Duncan Robertson from CFIB Atlantic. Him and I have talked about patios a number of times. That was an inside joke, but it's very true. 66 cents of every dollar you spend at a local business is going to the local business. Kind of makes sense, right? We talk about it a lot. I see stickers on a lot of cars. I see people, waving their Canadian flags, and we've heard the commercials with standing up for Canada and everything else. It's time to put the rubber on the road, people. It's summer season. This is our big season here. So let's think about it. Let's not lose focus, which I think Canadians were doing when we started to see maybe the relationships thaw a little, but that ended kind of on Friday. It's so important. And what does Mercer say? You spend like your country depends on it. I think I can support that. Special treat for you when we come back from the break. Not just one, but two Olympians in studio. We'll have a conversation with Kate Vincent and Connor Fitzpatrick when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic Monday. I think that we need to maybe get one of those, what are they, the online petition started that when Canada Day or one of these holidays that are on set days fall this close to a weekend, that we we just get the holiday thrown in. Most people are, right? Like Vanessa will tell you that trying to get a hold of people today is not an easy thing to do. But today's technically not a holiday, but it really should be. If you were listening earlier this morning when I was reading the news, the traffic was really light. I'm looking out at Roby Street now, and it looks pretty light. And I think there's a lot of people that have either taken the whole week or have at least taken today to make it an extra, like Todd did, an extra long weekend. The U.S. does it, right? They do it with their Thanksgiving Day holiday. Their Thanksgiving is a Thursday. So they do the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's a super long weekend. But, or maybe President Trump's onto something, saying that there are too many holidays where we're in damaging or impacting the economy. But it's very interesting when you're doing long range planning and you're setting things up and you're like, I'll just work that Monday, no big deal, right? But then you're sitting here when you're going into work, it's like, I should have took this day off. I know Vanessa's saying that out loud, even though she was off on Friday. Just waiting for our next guest to arrive. I got a couple of emails throughout the open hour that I never got to, or I did not get to. One of them came from Alan, who said that, I think we touched on this on another email, bike lanes won't be used in Halifax unless we get bridge access to the Halifax side of the McDonald Bridge fixed. If you're going to spend the money to encourage cycling in the city, that's where the focus should be. That one from Alan. This one comes to me from Joyce, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit of this. As she said, I appreciate your push back against the two bike lovers. They don't have a clue, or do they not care that most of us, what we have to do to get around? Councillor Laura White, can bike 5 minutes to Dow, and then she takes the family on a ride share. It's not the reality for most. That I'll agree with you, Joyce, on. The ride share is an option for those where the ride share is, but in neighborhoods where there are or is no ride share, then that suddenly becomes less of an option. I use my neighborhood, for example. I touched on it, and I don't think I said it on the air, but the street that I live on in Clayton Park, the councillor that's representing that area has a survey in the market now about converting a very busy thoroughfare, which is Parkland Drive, into a bike lane route. and that would be permanent protected bike lanes. And what I think that needs, part of that discussion, part of the whole picture that you need to take into account with that is the makeup of the neighborhood, right? And by that I mean that part of the neighborhood is full of apartment buildings. And many of the people that live in the apartment buildings park their cars on the streets. And if you put protected bike lanes in front of those buildings, then there's no longer parking there. And that will create a problem. Also, in the survey said that there was a suggestion, and I know this is going to get back to the congestion problem, but in that Clayton Park survey, it was noted that if by putting protected bike lanes on a street like Parkland Drive, is going to slow traffic down, which I call nonsense too. The bike lanes are not going to take up any more, maybe a minuscule amount more than that are already occupied by the parked vehicles on the street, right? Parkland Drive was built with street parking in mind. It's really wide. So how is that going to slow the traffic down? I truly hope that when we get these surveys and consultations that we're actually partaking in the discussion with council. And the decision isn't already made before the public consultation goes out. And I've heard that on a number of different projects that HRM has said, yeah, we're having a consultation session, but essentially the minds are made up already. And I truly hope that that's not the case, but I worry that it is. Because if it's not, then it's a gargantuan waste of time, is it not? This one comes to me from Tom. It says, hey, Dan, Shawn, that being Shawn Cleary, is going to spin things his way and will never give an inch to an opposing argument. He just doubles down. He mentioned that taking his bike to get groceries, really, says Tom. He certainly eats lighter than my wife and I because we just finished a Costco groceries run. We're in our mid-70s, and I just don't see how we could have done that on bikes. This one comes to us from Joe, and I think this is a really good point. You make the argument that we need to use bikes more, but Joe says, we spoke a little earlier, Dan, and you asked the question if you work in construction or any kind of trade. He said, I'm a carpenter, and if I drove my bike, I'd most likely lose my tools. I think he's being a bit facetious. He says, you show up to work without your hammer, you get fired. There and then. Cost of replacing anything out of my pouch, the cost of that. And I need my saw and my 2-foot square too. How do I ride my bike to work? It's a discussion, and I know that it's very, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's divisive, maybe? That you're on one side of this or the other. There's very few people that live in the middle. And I don't think that it's going to go away based on what we get here. And again, I know Todd has said this in the past, that we get a small segment of the population that listen to the show every day, right? It gives you an idea of what public opinion is, but it certainly isn't necessarily what the majority of public opinion is, if that makes any sense. But the cool thing about this is that we get an opportunity to share our thoughts and our opinions on things, and that's kind of what talk radio is all about, and that's what Todd does, and I know that he looks forward to that open hour segment every day. Just waiting for our next guest to give us a call. This came across my desk moments ago, and it has to do with coastal properties in Nova Scotia. The government releasing this about 10 minutes ago. People who want to buy coastal property in Nova Scotia will have one more tool to help make informed decisions about living along the coast. Beginning on July 1st, which is tomorrow, buyers will have the option of property disclosure statement forms to request that the seller disclose whether Coastal flooding, coastal erosion, general flooding, and pooling or drainage issues have affected the property. Not having bought any oceanfront property as of late, I don't know if this was a problem before. I know erosion has been an issue, and it's been in the news a lot. According to the government, the change to the form made by the Nova Scotia Real Estate Commission will follow the government's commitment to work with the Commission on increasing awareness and understanding of potential hazards with owning coastal property. Property disclosure statements encourage full communication between the property sellers and buyers, helping protect both parties in real estate transactions and helping buyers make informed decisions about providing them with as much information as possible about the property. Changes to the statements apply to both properties and buildings on vacant land. And you can get more on this if you own oceanfront property or are looking to buy some at novascotia.ca/coastal climate change. And also from the government today, well, that's not till tomorrow, so we won't tell you about that until tomorrow. We're going to stop, take a break, and see what is going on with our guests, and we'll be back when we get back. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. Although you know what they say about the best laid plans, right? Anyway, hope you're having a fantastic Monday, and as we get ready to celebrate Canada Day in the next 24 hours or so, as many of you are taking that extra long weekend, I hope that, and I'm very glad that you spent some time with us today. It won't be very long until we start to see the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, perhaps back in the House of Commons. This story from the Canadian Press: Pierre Poilievre has chosen one of the safest possible places to make his return to the House of Commons, but the rural Alberta riding he's hoping to win in the August by-election could also be dangerous territory for the Conservative leader. Damien Keurig resigned his seat in Battle River Crowfoot earlier this month after winning more than 82% of the support in the April 28th election. Today, Mark Carney announced that he has set August 18th for a by-election to choose Keurig's replacement. In an emailed statement, Poilievre said it would be an honor to represent the riding, and he plans to continue fighting for oil and gas, low taxes, free enterprise, and strong defense and respect for the West. Farmers and energy workers and soldiers of Battle River, Crowfoot, feed, power, and protect Canada. He said, I'll work hard with humility, to earn the support of people in this extraordinary region. While almost no one expects Poilievre to lose, according to this article, the decision to run in this particular part of the country has some analysts scratching their heads. Janet Brown said it sounded like he was looking for some sort of cakewalk by-election where he could easily get in, but he may have made a miscalculation there, according to Janet Brown, who's a pollster and political commentator in Calgary. What may have seemed like an easy riding on the surface is going to look more complicated. Separatist sentiment has been on the rise in Alberta since the Liberals managed an election win seemed unlikely, if not impossible, 6 months ago. A group called the Alberta Prosperity Project has pledged to push the referendum on the question, do you agree that the province of Alberta should become an independent country and cease to be a province of Canada? Former Conservative Cabinet Minister Stockwell Day says he thinks a referendum is a good idea. So has this opened up a landmine or two for Mr. Poilievre as he tries to regain a seat in the House of Commons, and then perhaps this separatist movement in Alberta is going to end up harming him in his battle for re-election. Anyway, August, I think 18th was the date that Mr. Poilievre said, or that Mr. Carney has set for that by-election, that riding. We talked about it in the morning news today, and when it comes to the weather, and I'm looking out at the skies right now, and they're looking a little cloudy, and when it comes to the weather, I usually go to one source, and that source is our 95.7 weather specialist. You hear him here on Friday afternoons at 12:45, but he's doing a special guest appearance today to bail me out, and that is Alistair Alders. Alistair, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm a little drenched from the weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You were talking earlier this morning. I heard you on the morning news suggesting that the sun was going to make an appearance here in the not too distant future. I don't see it yet, but I'm sure it's on its way.
I think the wording may have been later this afternoon,
okay,
and
right.
not early.
Don't question the weather guy. Got it. And then you had also suggested that we should probably be keeping an eye on the forecast for tomorrow night when many will gather to watch the fireworks display. I know that the new forecasts are out and the new models are out. What is the very latest, Alistair Alders, with regards to the weather for tomorrow night's fireworks display?
Doesn't it seem like there's always some form of hiccup for Canada Day fireworks?
Right.
I mean, before I dive into it, but you know, if you have plans during the day tomorrow, it's looking really good with, you know, sun and clouds. If you're at the coast, there will be a bit of fog and cloud, but, you know, sun and cloud temperatures in the, you know, mid to high 20s. I would say more mid 20s, 23 to about 25, 26. But we have a warm front that will be lifting in through Tuesday evening, and that warm front is going to come with an increase in cloud cover, an increase in the humidity, so it's going to become quite foggy. And of course, with the fog comes the chance that we see some of that drizzle with the fog, and there's expected to be some showers that move in with this front. And the timing is still a bit up in the air right now. The models, though, showing the chance that we will see the possibility of showers and maybe even a few rumbles of thunder moving through mid to late evening. So that would be right around when the fireworks are scheduled. I think most displays usually go off, you know, 9:45 or right at 10. And at this time, there is fair agreement that we'll see these showers start to move in. You know, some bring them in possibly earlier in the evening, but right now I'm leaning towards, you know, first a bit of fog and drizzle and then a few showers mid to late evening. So the potential that the fireworks displays might have to be postponed just because they don't want to set them off in foggy and drizzly and rainy weather, which, I mean, we've dealt with on a number of Canada Days in years past. They've often had to move them. So I think that's a real possibility for tomorrow evening, at least in the Halifax area. If you're farther north and east, better opportunities that we're just dealing with cloud cover and maybe some fog patches. But, you know, right for the city and along the coast, it looks like it's going to be quite cloudy, quite foggy, and with some showers or drizzle moving through.
Showers, cloud, fog, drizzle. 4 bad words for fireworks.
Yes, not great. Not great at all. I mean, this was a long time ago. I remember going to fireworks in Halifax, and they set them off, but it was so cloudy you couldn't even see them.
Right.
You know, it's always a difficult decision, I think, to move them because so many people, you know, are planning their activities around going to the fireworks Tuesday evening. But I'd say, you know, right now, if there's anyone listening who's, you know, making that decision, I'd say, well, there's a pretty good chance you'll want to move them ahead just because we're really going to be looking at a pretty good shot at seeing some showers moving through right when you're wanting to set those fireworks off. And you put all that money into them, you might as well, you know, push it forward and set them off when the weather's a little nicer at least.
All right. So moving forward, Alistair, we know that obviously the weather can change. Just wait 5 minutes. That's an old saying.
Yes.
That being said, what is the rest of the week looking like? What's Wednesday and through to Friday? I know that we're getting a little bit long range, but well, you know, is the sun coming back? Is it going to get humid? What's going to happen?
So we're in for definitely a humid week, and unlike last week where it was, you know, hot, you know, low 30s, it's not going to be as hot, but we are going to be into a really humid stretch of weather for the rest of the week and into the weekend. So certainly feeling humid and for some uncomfortable for the rest of the week. We're certainly going to be seeing the sunshine, but as is common this time of year, with such humid weather, the clouds and fog might remain quite capped right along the coast. And then we're going to see that fog and cloud moving inland, you know, for the evening and nighttime, and then in the morning it's around, and then it pulls back to the coast. So
right.
That's the pattern I'm really seeing setting up, especially for the middle and later stages of the week. So as I mentioned, tomorrow during the day is pretty fine, sun and cloud, and then the chance of showers moving through for the evening and overnight. Wednesday is a bit of a dull start, clouds, fog, chance of showers, but then sun and cloud in the afternoon, 24. Thursday, morning fog to a mix of sun and cloud, 22 sun and cloud, but some fog likely again in the morning Friday, and temperatures near 24 degrees at this point. So, not too bad. Right now for the all-important weekend, dare I say it, sun and cloud, chance of showers, though, right now on Saturday. Temperatures will likely still be fairly warm, mid-20s, and then possibly a bit warmer by Sunday. Sunday right now is the day that is looking dry for the weekend with a fair weather mix of sun and cloud. And as I mentioned, temperatures look to be in the 20s, although some models bring in a chance of a shower. So we'll just have to see how that weekend evolves. But, generally fair, a bit of an unsettled overall pattern just because of these chances for, a few somewhat, scattered pop-up showers, which will be greater outside of the Halifax area this week. But certainly plenty of opportunities for sunshine, but humid, a lot of morning and nighttime fog, but breaking to a sun and cloud mix in the afternoon. We'll just really notice the humidity this week for sure.
And very quickly, Alistair, we've only got about a minute and a half. We had their first named storm of the season out in the middle of nowhere, not affecting land, and things, as I understand it, look pretty quiet, at least in our part of the world.
Yeah, so we actually had the second named storm develop over the weekend, Barry, which made landfall along the eastern shores of Mexico. Overall, pretty quiet. Sea surface temperatures in the main development region where these storms form are, generally a bit cooler than they were compared to this time last year, which has been helping. And there's been a lot of that Saharan dust moving over the Atlantic, which really limits storm development. It suppresses it, so that's a good sign. The National Hurricane Center is watching for a long weakening cold front that there could be a disturbance that develops around the Florida panhandle or possibly to the northeast of Florida later in the week. Right now they're giving it about a low 20% chance of developing into a named system, but certainly Florida will be in for some wet weather regardless. At this time, it doesn't look to be anything that we need to keep an eye on, but of course, if it does materialize into something that does establish itself, we'll keep an eye on it. But it looks like if it does develop into anything, it would be fairly weak and likely stay out of our region.
Alistair, thanks. Very short notice, my friend.
Not a problem.
That is
Have a great Canada Day.
You too. That is our weather specialist, Alistair Alders, here on a Monday. Thank you very much to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for keeping things moving forward, to all of our guests, and most importantly to you for spending some time with us, picking up the phone, dialing the numbers, and joining the conversation. You make my day every day you do it. Have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic Canada Day. We'll see you when you see you. And remember, be kind to one another.